Hey guys, what's up? This is episode 2 of the Rumination Project, and today we're going to talk about magic mushrooms and how to heal with them. My journey with magic mushrooms started last January of 2021 when I met somebody who actually was growing them, and she introduced me to them. And my journey has now it's been a whole year now. It's January 22nd, 2022, and it's been pretty miraculous and been pretty amazing. It has also been very difficult for me to talk about, as I've had to put myself in a very vulnerable place to talk about it and overcome actually a lot of fear. So anybody who's overcoming fear today, you should applaud yourself and pat yourself on the back, because it's tremendously hard to overcome your own internal fear of just doing something, even when it's really uncomfortable. So you can bear with me, because I'm actually facing my own fear as I sit here and talk, because it's not easy to talk about what happened this whole past year, because it's been there's been a lot of dark trips. My eyes have been completely opened, and my life is completely different now. And I'm still very connected to the whole experience, as I always will be. And many times I'll start to tear up, or I'll feel it come forward, and it makes me choke up a little bit. So you'll have to bear with me as I go through this podcast at moments that may happen. And that's where a lot of my fear actually lies, is actually opening up and putting yourself in a vulnerable state of mind. So in January of 2021, after I met this girl, I went and started doing a bunch of research into magic mushrooms and what they were, because at my first experience, I thought it was a joke when I heard they were going to be legalized, and my ignorant self knew nothing about these molecules and their power. So, I kept looking into it. I probably watched 100 hours of videos before I ever actually tripped. And during my first trip, it was pretty amazing. And I found this 3-step process. I don't really know where I found it. I think I just put it together through a few things, but it's more of a ritual that you can put into using mushrooms. And I did this from the beginning, and when I first started tripping. And that's what I'm going to explain today. But I wanted to play a video first. It's going to explain how powerful these molecules actually are. We don't really know a lot about what psilocybin does to your brain yet, but we think that it does 2 things to different parts of your brain, and it diminishes your ego and that portion of the brain. And it's very complex, and I'll let science talk about that, but I wanted to talk about the actual effects that you feel in this video, more or less. And I was going to play a video by Mary Casamano. I hope I pronounced her name right. And she is a Johns Hopkins researcher, and she's done, as far as I know, probably 1,000 guided mushroom trips with people as they keep researching. And I'm going to play 3 minutes of this portion, and then I'm going to talk some more.
Got me here. Since 2000, I have worked in the Department of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in our research with psilocybin, or as many refer to it, magic mushrooms. We have conducted multiple studies with psilocybin, including cancer end of life with anxiety and depression, smoking cessation, and major depressive disorder, among others. We recently received a $17 million grant to open a center for psychedelic and consciousness research and build on our work. We will be conducting a wide range of studies, from anorexia nervosa and early stage Alzheimer's to PTSD and opioid addiction. The grant is impressive, and it reflects the success of our research. Here are some findings from our cancer study at the 6-month follow-up. Approximately 80% showed clinically significant decreases in anxiety and depression. And almost 70% called it one of the top 5 spiritually significant experiences of their lives. There is a lasting impact for many of our study volunteers. Our smoking cessation pilot study outcomes, although just 15 people, is unprecedented, more than double the average abstinent rates. 80% were abstinent at the 6-month follow-up, 67% at the 12-month follow-up, and 60% at the 2.5-year follow-up. And preliminary results of our depression study at the 1-month follow-up, almost 70% of our 24 volunteers showed clinically significant improvement, and 50% full remission to normal. Depression is a vexing problem. For half of our volunteers to be in full remission is remarkable if these results hold over time. It could be a major breakthrough in treatment for depression. And through my time at Hopkins, I have had the extraordinarily privileged position of witnessing hundreds of these volunteer sessions. And what I have seen emerge is the core of the experience is love and connection, a reconnecting to our true, authentic self. For many, these experiences gave voice to something unexpected, a realization that confirmed these beliefs. One volunteer said, "I was full of love and joy and connection. It was an awesome outpouring of love. It really struck me vividly that love is home. It is natural and present when obstacles are removed." Study volunteers come to us with a wide range of issues, and you've seen some of the measurable results of the psilocybin experience.
Isn't that pretty awesome? These molecules are very powerful, and this study is showing that it's treating a lot of different things, and that's pretty amazing. And they found a lot more since then. This video was made in 2019, but it's very informative of what they're discovering about this molecule. So I wanted to tell you that these are very powerful molecules, and if you use them in the way that I'm going to explain, you're more than likely going to be chasing a lot of trauma and darkness, and it's not. You have to be prepared for that. And I want to say that over, you have to be prepared for that, because you cannot hide from darkness when you do it this way. And this method is just to use to heal your mind, and it can really make your life a lot better. And I'm going to explain the first step in this process. It is called intention. And an intention is, what are you looking for in the trip? And I usually set my intention a week before advance. And it's usually just a question. To be honest, the first question I ever had was, why do I not have a close relationship with my mother? And I had always wondered that. I had always wondered that my whole life. It was a question that I felt was important to answer. And I found a lot more than what I was looking for. That was my first intention ever. If you ask a question while you're tripping, or I guess a week before, you meditate to the question, and you meditate to it daily, and you kind of think about what you're going to find out. And then when you actually trip and you consume the mushroom, and you stay with that intention, many times it will be answered. And just incredible that you'll actually get an answer. As long as you stay true to the intention in the trip, it will guide you to the truth, as the molecule actually, it brings you to, it lets you see the whole picture, as I put it, of your trauma. And sometimes it takes many times. Sometimes I don't know what science is going to prove here, how many times it takes to chase a lot of people's deep trauma, but I think it takes multiple times. A lot of times I just experimented, and I didn't set any intentions, but I was more or less experimenting with the molecule. And I discovered a lot of things that how it works, and I guess, as you put it, they're more advanced tripper, as science puts it. I've done it a lot where I'm very experienced what I'm doing when I'm in this, when the molecule is actually inside of me in a heavy trip. These intentions can be very, very strong. They can, once you set an intention and you stay true to it in the trip, a lot of times you'll find something, and it will be a very powerful experience. Many times spiritual and mystical things happen, as in I can probably explain at least 6 times that things that I can't explain happened in these trips. And these many times, the next morning I was a different person. And I don't really understand how that happens. These molecules are potent, and I don't know anybody else I know a few people I've taught to trip with intentions, and they have powerful experiences when you set intentions and you stick with it while you're tripping, because the question will be answered. Also, a lot of people think that when you approach difficult things in a trip, especially with the intention that are with the intention to run away from them, and many times you should approach them, but you should also have a backup plan, because they can get extremely difficult. So I always have a friend on call can come over if needed, if you're tripping by yourself. I always recommend to trip by yourself if you actually want to chase your own trauma, because it's a different experience when you're by yourself compared to when somebody else is there. It's a very different experience. I think it's because a lot of times we don't feel as vulnerable when somebody else is there compared to when we're alone, and we feel that vulnerableness, and our ego dissolves and we let go, and that's when you actually see the whole truth of the trauma. I've had very mystical experiences as well happen that changed my life forever. That made me, question why we're here. And I think those are very important experiences to feel, to make you feel important, to yourself. We call it the love of the universe, and that's what you feel on these trips. You feel a lot of love, but that love is a lot of self-love, and that's what we all should feel. We all should love ourselves first. And a lot of these times, these experiences are all about that, and it's a very lovely feeling, amazing feeling to feel it. It expands your mind when you drop your ego and you feel love and you feel no fear. Because I don't think a lot of people understand how much fear is a driving force of our lives when you think about what you're scared of. And a lot of us are scared of ourselves. I was scared of myself. I still am. I actually back out and say no a lot of these times when I need to trip to have a spiritual experience, because I don't want to face myself. because I know that I'm going to have to face the trauma. And a lot of times that is not easy for people to face, but that's literally, if you think about it, who scares you the most? It's yourself. And that's a lot of the most successful people in life are the ones who get over that. Aren't scared of themselves. And that's what these mushrooms actually do. They allow you to get over that fear, open your mind. And when you open your mind and you're in a meditative state, you get more access to your brain, you're more aware, trauma comes forward, and it's rewritten in a different way that makes sense to you, I guess. And everybody's tripping story it's different than the next. But actually science has proven that if you do trips over and over, that you can continue on a storyline that makes sense to you in a spiritual journey. And that's 100% has happened to me personally. It's been a journey that has been in a story that makes sense to me, that my brain has made into a story. I don't know where the information for the story comes from, but that's why it's considered mystical experiences. And every time I have one, it humbles me to the core. And it makes me know how special we really are. A lot of people forget we're on this ball in this huge galaxy, in this huge universe. And somehow we were put here by a lot of unique things, and that's pretty special alone. And a lot of us tend to forget that. So we'll move on to the second part. Is step 2 is, the trip, and I've been talking a lot about that, but when you actually do the trip, your mental state is really important. I always suggest meditating or doing some kind of yoga that day, something to relax your mind before you actually take the mushrooms. Because if you're not in a good mood and you're going to the trip, especially if you're not experienced, it can be a very uncomfortable situation you put yourself into. And I've done it before, and I've gone into trips angry, and they weren't good experiences. But I mean, they changed my life. But they make it more difficult unless if you're just in a happy mood, an open mind, and a relaxed state of mind is really important. As they say, the setting is really important as well. Setting is really important. I don't recommend tripping outside if you're not experienced, because you do have no control over the situation. There's a lot of variables outside that can come into play that will make it very uncomfortable. I've approached strangers while on mushrooms, and it's very weird. You have no ego, and I think it makes it really strange when you have nothing to present the person, as we call it. There's a part of your brain that kind of says hello to people when you meet them, and when that is dropped and gone, it is very bizarre. So do it around people you're comfortable with, for sure. Don't do it around strangers, because you can have strange altercations like I have before. Less lighting is important. I light a lot of candles. It's something, a very meditative state of mind. Clean your house. A dirty house is really bad in a trip, because it can make you feel a little anxious when they start to come instead of relaxed. You have to be able to let go of what you're feeling in order to get the true essence of the healing and find the answer to the intentions. And that can be difficult for some people to let go. And I've had many conversations with people who said that alone makes them not want to do mushrooms, is losing that control and not letting go. And it is a very hard thing to explain to people what happens in a trip when the point is where you have to let go or you block the energy. And blocking the energy, there's no healing at all. Which some of the true experienced trippers can block the energy. A lot of people who first experience cannot. So you have to just let go, and letting go, run towards doors. If you see something that scares you, walk towards it. If hallucinations appear, say first, why are you here? And then second, you're not real. And many times the hallucinations will actually disappear. I only experienced the hallucination once. I saw bugs crawling on my arms, and I said it wasn't real, and it immediately went away. So I just want people to be aware of that. Speaking out loud is very powerful in a trip. So if something appears, talk to it. Don't make yourself feel like you're crazy, because you're consuming a mushroom, and you're kind of separating your personalities of who you are. We all have dark sides, and we all have a light side. And that's a fact. And people have a lot of secrets that they only keep to themselves. And it kind of separates those two people. And you can kind of see it in a trip, how it separates. So have that conversation with your ego if you feel like it has dissolved into nothing. Ask it questions. Ask it why. Ask state questions, and it's important to do that. I always said about the emergency friends, that's very important. I always did, and I actually used it once. Just have somebody who's either a phone call or is able to come over. Even a phone call is good, because just to hear their voice can be reassuring. If it's even worse, they can come over as well. That's important. Also, ritual and power objects is another thing. I have some crystals, and I'm not saying that I actually believe that they are connected to the universe. There's a lot of science to prove if crystals can actually hold energy, and I believe they can. But they also are power objects. And what I mean by a power object is when you're actually tripping, it's an object that relates to that experience. So if you have like a pretty crystal or something carried around when you're tripping, if you actually carry it around even weeks to months later, it will take you back to that experience and actually change the chemistry to your brain months later. Science is actually showing and proving that object is connected to the experience. And when you look at the object, your brain starts to reconnect neurologically to that experience again. And your mood can be lifted instantly by doing that. So that's why I call it, there's nothing wrong with having a ritual or a power object, because that's what they do. They change the chemistry of your brain even months later. And that's important. And that's why I have a lot of crystals, and I find them, I don't have to consume the mushroom to feel that experience again when I'm around them. So that's really nice to have. And with those people who are around, I just want to also say that make sure they're not judgmental, because you are in a very fragile state of mind when you consume mushrooms. They're very fragile, and these people are your caretakers to your brain, to your soul at that moment. So it's important to be extremely comfortable around that person. I want to make that clear, because if you trip and you're with somebody you do not like, it's not going to be a good experience, for sure. And that's where people get a lot of bad trips, when you are around that bad energy of people who you should not be tripping around. Do not trip around people who drink. That is for sure. Because alcohol changes their state of mind, and they aren't as very aware to what is going on, and a lot of times it can bring forth their anger as well. So don't ever don't ever trip with somebody who's drinking, and don't ever mix alcohol with the mushroom if you're using it in this healing method. There's also a couple ways to consume them. Lemon Tech, or has just put it in some lemon juice, mix it for 20 minutes, clear the mushrooms out, and then drink the lemon juice. And that's an easier way to consume it. It'll help it digest. For people who have nausea issues or issues with their stomach, it's a lot easier to do, but I do not recommend it for first-time trippers. You should not do Lemon Tech until you're about your third trip, and then you'll be ready for it, because it is a little more powerful, hits you a little harder, doesn't last as long though. So you have to, that's one thing you just have to be prepared for. I usually just eat them, even though they taste like shit, but that's the best way to get the medication, I guess. Just make sure you chew them up completely. If you do not chew them up, they can get stuck in your small intestines, and then they'll actually produce a gas, and you'll get a lot of bloating and gas. It's my understanding there's a compound in the mushroom that begins to ferment if you mix it with sugar in the small intestines. I had that happen once, and you just have to work it through your small intestine. So that's why I recommend chewing it up completely, so you can avoid that happening. And I think we're going to play some more of her video, about these experiences. And then I'll talk some more. I think this is 3 minutes more about some more of the trip and stuff, about what science is showing.
Larger experience. Psilocybin is strong medicine. It can be overwhelming. Being prepared for the experience is critical. The preparation enables our volunteers to relax and let go into the second phase, the psilocybin session. When we are tense or blocked, we don't allow the flow. Being relaxed allows this expansion and access to states of consciousness that often bring about a mystical experience that most of our volunteers have endorsed.
Notice how she said the letting go part, and that is extremely important to let go if you want to actually have a mystical experience. And I'll let her talk more about that.
Mystical experiences are characterized by a transcendence of time and space, deeply felt positive mood, a sense of sacredness, and love and connection to all of life. But it's important to point out that not all our volunteers benefit from our studies, that you don't have to have a mystical experience to have a meaningful or transformative experience, and that these sessions are not always easy. In fact, they can be quite difficult. In preparation, we address possible difficulties, how to stay with them and navigate them during the session, and to see them as an important and meaningful part of the process. I have been witness to many volunteer sessions that were both difficult and had no mystical component at all, and yet were deeply meaningful and transformative. And this brings us back to love and connection. Study after study, volunteer after volunteer, session report after session report, I see the same themes emerge. We are love. The present moment is all there is. There's an interconnectedness to all of life and a deep-rooted knowingness of our true, authentic self. The psilocybin experience offers a means to reconnect to the present, our true nature, our authentic self, to love. One volunteer said this of his experience: "It is a total connection with the universe. It is a state of awareness beyond description, profound, yet one has the deep knowingness that this is our true reality." There's also incredible joy. Hearing the laughter of someone feeling love and connection on a deep level is unlike anything else. Joy itself can be a breakthrough. One of our cancer study volunteers, who had been joyless for years, wrote that this experience was meaningful to her long after the session was over, describing how she began laughing out loud and how that joy-filled experience put her back in touch with a feeling she thought impossible to ever have again. And finally,
that's always amazing. I always tear up when I hear that story about the lady who finds joy again. And I think that science is showing that somewhere around the age of 5, our ego starts to evolve. And if you actually think about it, there's not like a 5-year-old, anybody below that, who has a mental illness. It always happens at that age and then after 5. And it's a crucial age where a child becomes his own self. When the brain starts to really go down a road that is separate from anybody else's own journey. And we kind of get tied to that road permanently. And what happens is the mushrooms kind of shake that road a little bit, and they allow you to see the other roads that you had forgotten about, that only a child can see. And there are actually MRI scans that show somebody tripping on mushrooms has the same brain as a child, a 5-year-old. And that's fascinating to me. It shows that the brain is back at an age where its plasticity is able to change quickly. It's not stuck on its own ways. And that's when a lot of mental illnesses happen, is when the brain gets stuck, and it gets stuck on a road in a circle. And the brain shakes that, or the molecule that's inside the mushroom shakes that up and allows you to see that that's not the only road. And it's an awesome experience. And I think that science is going to prove that it's going to show a lot about our own brains and about how consciousness works. And it's pretty awesome. And the third step to all this, after all the trip and the intention, is the manifestation. How do you incorporate what you experienced into your life? And that's, if you don't do the manifestation, you just had an experience. And if you don't incorporate it into your life, that's all it was an experience. It didn't really matter. But you have to incorporate it into your life. And a lot of times the next day, actually, after your trip, you're in a weird state of mind, I'll tell you that. Kind of in shock and awe of what you experienced, and that's you're thinking about it a lot. And a lot of times you can not be in a good mood, because you may have just uncovered some trauma, and that's completely normal. I had some days where it was in a strange mood. It improves with days. I would say by the 3rd day after your trip is when you can start to see a really big improvement in your moods. Especially when you start to sleep a little deeper, because I think that night you do mushrooms does mess with your sleep a little bit. So it's pretty normal to feel lousy the next day if you did uncover trauma, and that's okay. I suggest to talk about your experience to somebody who knows a lot about this stuff. Me myself, I had a friend who is actually a medium as well, and she was able to incorporate a lot of the mysticism that happened in my trips to how to decode it, I guess, into how it affected my life. And I found deep meaning in that when you find somebody to talk to who understands what happens in these mushroom trips and understands the spiritual side of it, as well as the science aspect of it, as well as who understands trauma. And a lot of times a medium actually understands all that. That's how they're able to see everything. So if you know somebody who's a medium, use it. They're effective for that, to help you understand a lot of that. As weird as that sounds. Also, any friend who has an open mind, who has kind of mysticism or spiritualism, they understand a lot about what happens too. And it's just important to talk about what you experience, because when the brain actually talks about it, it interprets it differently. It makes sense to you a lot more. And that's why I actually did this podcast, because once I talk about it, it's word, it's there, it can't be taken back. And then your brain starts to see, the true picture, and how to manifest the trip and the experience into your life and change your life. And a lot of these times, these manifestations happen by themselves. There's plenty of studies that show people's diet have changed. They've talked to their close relatives who said the day after they tripped, they were completely a different person. These are profound changes. These are profoundly powerful molecules, and they will shake your brain up like a snow globe, and the possibilities or whatever you want to after that. That's why intentions are important, and that's why manifestations are important. They're all 33% of the whole experience, as part of it, as well as doing the mushroom. Without the intention, without the manifestation, you can't have true healing. And that's the way I did it. And I know this whole ritual is actually it's a shamanic ritual, kind of. And John Hopkins is doing similar to this without the true intentions of asking a question. But you can do the same ritual to meditation, to any thing where you're in a different state of mind, with asking a question, meditating, and then manifesting that experience to the answer into your life. And a lot of people don't even know that just sitting in silence, sitting in complete silence, will answer a lot of your own questions to your life. If you're in silence, if you're able to reduce your ego, and I say reduce your ego where you feel you can make a decision with no hate, no prejudice, and no anger, and you only make the judgment with love. And when you're at that place in your state of mind, and you have an answer, and you feel none of that anger, hate, and resentment, then you'll feel only love. You made the right decision. That's who you are. And you have to get to that state of mind. And that's, mushrooms, I guess, are a shortcut. But you can access the same state of mind by going into silence. I myself like to listen to music that I trip to, and it will bring me back to that state of mind. I also sit in nature, and nature brings me back to that state of mind. But that's basically what mushrooms are. It's a high state of meditation. And when you use the ritual like I did, you can find really true healing. And I really hope a lot of people do. Once these mushrooms are legalized, and we find out that Eastern medicine has to be put into the consumption of the mushroom, it's important that people apply their own spiritualism and their own mysticism, their own beliefs, their own intentions into the experience to find the questions to their own self and find healing. And I wanted to play the rest of her video here on explains a lot more, and we'll finish this up.
And finally, we incorporate these experiences into day-to-day life. Integration is a key component of each study. Otherwise, it would just be an experience. Integration is weaving the mystical into the practical, bringing the meaning of the psilocybin sessions into daily life. I have observed significant increases in quality of life and personal meaning. Priority shifting, awareness of what's important and letting go of what's not. Increases in patience and increases in a core sense of self.
That right there is the number one reason that we get mentally ill, I believe, is A, we disconnect from nature, and then we start to hold these petty grudges of why me. And that makes us very, very jealous. It starts to feed into this ego inside of us. That makes us feel worthless. That's why if you're not in a good state of mind and you actually get onto social media and you see these people who live a life that you're jealous of, it's not a good place to put yourself. And it's why people end up committing suicide. It's why mental illnesses actually develop deeper. It's why our children are getting more mentally ill. Is because of all this. And I hope that these mushrooms start to open people's mind to the possibilities, of that we can find healing using them.
These are some of the observations that reveal the lasting impact that we see in our follow-ups at 1, 6, 12, and some at 14 months. But it's not just the psilocybin that does this. It's the relationship we establish, the awareness the volunteer experiences during the session, and the integration after. This work and nearly 400 study volunteers is what has kept me at Hopkins for 20 years. It is my relationship, my connection with them. That is how I see my role as a psychedelic guide. That is what makes my work so fulfilling, because to me, relationships are what make our lives meaningful. Our studies explore the same questions that had me listening intently to that love program years ago. Only now, rather than my personal exploration, it is that of our study volunteers. Who are you? Why are you here in this study at this time? And what's the meaning of your life? And each person has their own unique exploration. And yet, there's a universal experience too. A deep sense of love and connection to all. One of our depression volunteers told me that she did not feel alone anymore, and she summed it up beautifully. Such an amazing gift that I have been given. Not only the realization of inner peace, but the feeling of connection that I have reestablished for every human on this planet. When Leo Biscaglia was faced with the dilemma of how to make sense of the student who felt so disconnected that she took her life, he chose to start a class on love, knowing that love is the ultimate healer. So imagine the thrill for someone who wanted to do what Dr. Biscaglia did when I took this job, uncertain at first of its value or impact, and found our volunteers confirming this belief over and over, telling me their experiences revealed these simple truths. We are all one. We are all connected. We are all love. That is the potential of the psychedelic medicines, to show us who we really are and what truly matters, and thereby help us to heal ourselves and then the world. So now, imagine a friend or a loved one, or perhaps even yourself, entering one of our studies, struggling with an addiction, thoughts of suicide, or one of the disorders I've mentioned today. Now, imagine that same person exiting our study and reporting that their predominant and lasting feeling is one of love and connection. And now, imagine yourself saying and believing what this volunteer said.
I am love. I am in love. Love is in me. I breathe love. I am loved.
Thank you.
It's an awesome video, and I'm glad she shared that. It's awesome that out of all the science experience that this John Hopkins is doing, that the last thing they discovered was love. And I'm a very science guy, so I used to think that love was something that was made by humans until I did mushrooms, and it seems to be evident deep inside of us. It seems to be evident in a lot of other mammal species, and like the countless stories of dolphins saving humans' lives. That is an act of love. There's no reason for a dolphin to do that. Why would it? I feel that love is a lot more universal than we think. I understand that it's a chemical in our body, but it seems to be more evolutionary than an actual chemical. That means it's important to the planet that there's love. It's very important to the survival of the planet. And it's funny that these mushrooms, that's at the end of the experience, that's what they show, that we have to love each other. We have to love ourselves. We have to connect back to nature. And maybe the mycelium that is in these mushrooms is intelligent. Maybe it actually speaks to our mind in a way to make us save itself. Because if the mushroom evolved to speak to our mind, then that is the quickest way for the mushroom to be sprouted, is to have a human as its guardian, its guardian. And it seems that when you actually do the mushrooms, you then have a profound respect, not only for the fungi kingdom, but for the tree that's in your backyard. And that's remarkable. That at the end of the day, you can have a very bad day, but if you go outside and you look at that tree differently, with a different perspective, you can begin to appreciate how special you are. Because that tree that's in front of your house deserves to be there as much as you do. It fought life itself to be where it's at. And you have to respect the tree in order to respect yourself in a way. Because we all think that it's just a tree, but it's not just a tree. That tree in front of your house is why you exist. And us humans have seemed to have forgotten that. So I hope this video helps a lot of people understand mushrooms. I hope it understands that you can find healing of your trauma, that you can find healing in yourself, and that there is, light among the darkness. There's better days ahead. So, until next time, this is episode 2, and we'll see you later.